Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Representative Town Meeting for this evening, January 23rd, 2023. We do have a quorum with 66 out of a 100-person body in attendance. Before I turn it over to our moderator, Seth Morton, I have two public service announcements. The first being I'd like to acknowledge the work of Eric Canigan from District 4. He has unfortunately announced his resignation from the RTM, but I wanted to take this opportunity to thank him for his service to District 4, and hopefully maybe we'll see him again sometime. He has served on the body since 2020. And the second announcement, along with that resignation, I just thought I'd give the opportunity to update everyone as to where we stand with membership across the 6 districts. District 1 is full with 16 members. District 2 is full with 16 members. District 3 has 2 vacancies with a possible 17 membership. District 4 has 1 vacancy with a 16 membership body. District 5 has 2 vacancies as a possible 18 membership body. And District 6 is complete with 17 members. That is the update as where we stand as of today. Yes, Frank, I know that's very good for District 6. Where we stand today, so please spread the word. Friends and neighbors across Darien, get them in touch with the district chair so they may caucus and to try to get us back up to 100. And now I'd like to turn it over to Seth Morton, your moderator.
Always exciting to walk over about 3 or 4 wires to get here. Keep a close eye on me, will you? Next item is acceptance of the agenda. Without objection, I'll accept the agenda. Are there any objections? Great. Next is approval of the minutes of the December 12, 2022 State of the Town meeting. Can I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes? So moved. Can I have a second, please? Thank you. Bert, I happen to see you there. Quiet, but hand was up. Any corrections, additions, and deletions? Yes, Miss.
I have one amendment to the minutes. Amy Zavatakis, District 5. I am the unidentified female voice referred to in the minutes.
The mystery lady, wonderful. Any other corrections, additions? All right. Then, all those in favor of approving the minutes as amended with the fine lady's name added in, say aye. Aye. Opposed? I hear none. Abstentions, if you have any, you can turn them into the clerk later. The minutes stand approved for December 12th. Next is a presentation by the Darien Advisory Committee on Sustainability about single stream recycling. Speaking on behalf of the committee, Kathy Finnegan, and she's the chair. Kathy?
Some of us were cheating to make sure you can see me as well as hear me. Good evening. As Seth said, I want to let you know, my name is Kathy Finnegan. I've been a resident here in town for a bazillion years. I see a lot of familiar faces, but this year I took on from Carolyn Bain, my partner in crime, as chair of the Advisory Committee on Sustainability. And we do work with the town and the Department of Public Works on a number of different initiatives. It started as the Energy and Recycling Committee, and as things grew and as we got involved with the Sustainable CT Connecticut program, we changed the name, but that's who we are. So I never thought when I joined the committee that I would become an expert on garbage, but that is in fact what has happened. Thank you, Carolyn. There is so much to know that most of us would never even consider, and actually it's kind of scary because you become a little bit of a buzzkill in conversations or at the dump when you go deep with other members of the community on some of this stuff. So the reason we wanted to meet with you was really to give you an update on the waste management and recycling initiatives in the town, and secondarily to really reinforce the importance of recycling right, as in properly. And thirdly, to encourage all of you and anyone watching or listening to avail yourself of all the services, maybe some don't know they're here, and act as ambassadors to your neighbors and constituents. And we'll end with a to-do, because everyone's going to have a homework assignment to download an app, of course, called the Recycle Wizard, to know what's in and what's out. To talk about Darien, Carolyn and I talk about this a lot and spend some time. You almost have to take a second and step back and look at the big picture right now of these forces. It's like a perfect storm of garbage that's happening that at the moment isn't making too many waves in Darien, but it's out there, and how we plan and how we act as individuals really has to be thought of in the context of this. First off, I don't know if anybody knows, there are very few landfills in New England at all, none in Connecticut. One of the waste-to-energy plants in the Hartford area closed in 2022, and its use had been dwindling, but 20, 30 communities, I think by the end, had no place to dispose of their garbage. Imagine 20 Dariens having garbage picked up every day and no place to take it. It's really mind-boggling. Coming from another way, the volatility, many of you know in the markets about recycling and what's accepted and what's not accepted, and is plastic usable, and who's going to pay for it, and all that kind of stuff. So things are happening all different kind of ways. There's no place to put garbage. What can be recycled is sort of a moving target, and in inflationary periods, there are costs of transportation, which, as you think about Darien, when I get to the next couple of slides, and fuel costs is a huge part of what's going on. So our system is working really well, and I'm going to show you the good stuff, but it's important to keep thinking about how to make it better and what we can do to manage the costs and the kind of inevitable changes that are coming. In case you didn't know, fun fact, Connecticut processes about 2.4 million tons of garbage a year. I couldn't even figure what that was in pounds, and I couldn't even read the number on my phone when I calculated it, but it's sort of massive. And of that, about 1.4 million tons are incinerated in the state, in in-state processing plants. But the state of Connecticut ships 1 million tons of garbage, out of state every year to be thrown or placed in landfills in other communities in other states. So imagine just the cost of transportation, let alone other things that are going on. And so whether at the moment it's not a big factor to us in a contract with a local provider, these things are market forces that will affect us. Another note, I'm not sure how the pie chart really can be read here, but about 40% of what's in the Connecticut waste, based on deep studies, could be recycled. And another 23% is estimated to be food, organic matter that could be actually used for compost or biofuel. So when you think about this massive waste and you think about what's going into it, it kind of sets up something that's really unsustainable and is going to result, and we know the state was working last year on waste policy, so policy rising costs are going to kind of happen all around us. So how do we be proactive in our own daily lives right here in town? And that's really the crux of this presentation. It will be short, I promise you. No one wants to talk about garbage all night. But, we can all reduce what we consume or purchase. reusing, repurposing, thrift shops, swap shops, sharing, whatever, those things are important, and recycling, when you think of it in the context of what goes into the waste stream, is really the only option to manage costs or reduce costs or stop costs from going up in the future. And I could list you all the sort of really noble reasons, far-reaching reasons about reducing energy and saving the planet and reducing air pollution and conserving water. But really, the point of this and the conversation that we've all had on our advisory committee as we go to a lot of meetings and study this stuff with other peer towns is really the issue is how do we reduce the tonnage in our solid waste, which saves us money because we pay for every ton that gets taken away. We also want to minimize what's contaminated in the recycling stream because it reduces the value of what's in recycling and may, down the road, affect our ability to even recycle at all. So, in case you don't know, these pictures are courtesy of Carolyn Bain. This is the Wheelabrator facility in Bridgeport, and in fiscal '22, Darien paid to have 4,800 tons of waste carted and incinerated at Wheelabrator. And again, for some reason, I think in pounds, so I'm like, okay, so that's 10 million pounds of garbage every year from this one community. And we know that we know from what we observe that there is recyclable material in there, which gets back to, what we can all do individually. And we know there's food in there, and we do have a food waste program, but it's trial basis, or it's small. It's voluntary and it's small. Let's see. The really good news is we also divert about 3,000 tons through solid waste, through single stream recycling. So if those 3,000 tons went into the hoppers, imagine what the cost of the town of Darien would be to have that hauled away. So trash is a cost, recycling is something that's taken away as a benefit to the community. And for some of you who've been here forever and probably spend half your life there know these things, but maybe a few of you don't. The recycling center, actually, with the work of Public Works and this, the town meeting and the volunteers on our committee, we have the ability to recycle 17 different kinds of materials. And that's batteries, that's appliances, that's light bulbs, mattresses, tires, metal, the list goes on and on. The single stream recycling, which we think of glass, plastic, paper, textiles in those bins near the hopper, and many, many other things. So that is really great to see. However, I guess I should say, to end on that, and with few exceptions, as long as you've paid for a permit to the dump or the transfer station, these disposables are all free. And given the context of the world around us, that isn't the way it is everywhere or will necessarily be going forward. So the best we protect our facilities, the better off I think we all are. And we reportedly have a really good low level of contamination compared to other communities. Again, I think it's because people bring their own, and if you're going to the purpose of sorting it, you bring it and you sort your cardboard and your glass and things. But there are two problems. There's still an awful lot that goes into the hopper, into the municipal waste stream. You can be me and stand there and see cardboard or vacuum cleaner the other day. Let me see. The list goes on and on of things that people take and drop in the waste that we have hauled away, that goes to the incinerator when the incinerators are over capacity and gets hauled out of town. So in your own life or in your education with your constituents, recycling what can be recycled is really important. The flip of that is the stuff that goes into single stream recycling that shouldn't be there. There are some sort of big offenders, styrofoam, plastic film. You can't have any plastic film. You can sort of see a little picture up there of the shrink wrap around things. And it's really important that organic waste, shredded paper, the list of things that are all listed at the dump not go in there because it contaminates the waste, which gets to the problem of where it goes somewhere else and does it have any value left to it. And I know it's confusing because I look at this stuff and read it, and I don't even know half the time. You can't put shredded paper, you can't put plastic, you can't put styrofoam, little things jam up the machines. And I know that, it's maybe you want to wish cycle. I know that's Carolyn's word. You just take something, and if you throw it in, it will be recycled. Well, it ends up being tossed in the garbage, and oftentimes the whole lot gets tossed if it's too contaminated, which, again, stops the whole purpose of recycling. We just a little plug for cardboard. We recycle cardboard. You can put it in single stream. You can put it in this. There's a specific bin for cardboard. I watched cardboard all the time go in the hopper. It really should be brought over across the facility because there is a value to cardboard. Clean cardboard, when flattened and separated, it does have a value in the marketplace, so that's a good thing to recycle. And again, it keeps it out of the hopper, keeps it out of what we're paying to have hauled away. And begging again to anyone listening, please flatten your cardboard. When it doesn't flatten, it creates lots of issues of moving bins before they're really full, which then costs money to pull them away, and on and on and on. The goal is the stuff gets all cleanly separated, goes to the recovery facility, and we benefit from the not paying to have it hauled away and the not paying the tonnage rates for waste, and the materials hopefully get a second life. Okay, so how do you keep track of all this stuff? It really boils down to thanking people for their persistence, their diligence, their willingness to ask questions. But we have things on our website with the town. There are also materials through Recycle CT, which has a website and an app. And you can ask the app, while you're at the dump, can I take my hoses or my garden pots or whatever it might be and put them in recycling? And it will tell you yes or no. And it will tell you what to do if what you think you're going to do really isn't possible. So that's your homework. Download the Recycle Wizard and sort of hopefully take away from this sort of brief education of the world of garbage that we do have individual control over certain parts of what happens in our own town. Not the whole world, but in our own town. We can make a little better effort to keep materials out of the hopper. That reduces costs, which go to the taxpayer. We can maximize what we recycle if we use all those 17 different things. I know some people are really good about going around the whole dump. Others just dump everything in one place and go on. Your batteries shouldn't go in the hopper. Carolyn and I both heard a woman give a presentation last week through public radio about things that end up in landfills that start fire and that burn. I mean, it's just better, separate. It's better for everybody. Toxic chemicals, cost, many, many reasons, not the point of tonight. The last thing really is we could all do a better job of managing and recycling and diverting our food scraps. We did start a program in 2019, and so I have to pitch it and end on this. We have diverted 150 tons of food from the Darien municipal solid waste. Now that's a very small drop in the bucket for all of the trash that we haul, given the other numbers, but it is a start. And at this point, it's a residential drop-off program. We're not picking it up at your house, but with about 20 to 30% of garbage being food, the only logical place to look or place to improve is food. And it's the conversation everywhere we go. How can we get food scraps out of the municipal waste stream in order to reduce the cost of hauling our garbage? And it's better because food makes burning garbage harder, which means it's more expensive to burn the garbage. Food can be reused as energy, food can be compost, and the list goes on and on and on. In fact, we heard a presentation from Cambridge, Massachusetts, that has mandatory food scrap recycling, that it impacts their rodent population because the fact that food isn't in garbage keeps the rodents out of the garbage cans because the food bins are all locked and managed separately. So there are a million reasons, and our committee, I don't know where Carolyn went, is spending a lot of time thinking about how to increase the program. If you're in this audience and you're not using it, please think about learning how to take all your food scraps at the countertop, keep them and bring them to the transfer station. If you have neighbors or new neighbors, talk to them about it. If you need information, contact us. We're looking at what ideas could be to have another drop-off site outside the transfer station, or to participate with the schools, or to work with restaurants or congregate housing. So they're all ideas, and we work with, obviously, Ed Gentile on how we could possibly do that. So with that being said, I want to kind of just leave everybody not with there's a crisis that nobody can solve, but with kind of a hopeful thought that we're all in this together. We're in a small community. We have some really great people that have volunteered their time and have built some really good systems. But for the systems to work, they only work when they're all about the people in the residents in the community actually taking the time to use the facilities that have been set up. And we just hope you will kind of redouble your efforts, get the Recycle Wizard, and come to our meetings of the Sustainable Committee if you have ideas. Thank you. Somebody needs that. Let me just put that here. Okay. Okay, how do we keep you from tripping on these cords? You see them? Yep.
Oh, yes.
Up.
Thank you, Kathy. The next item on the agenda is presentation on the current status of the town budget. Presentation by the Chair of the Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis.
Unfortunately, it looks like this plug does not go into my PC. Woohoo, it works. Sort of. Now I'm going to do that right now. Perfect. I'm Jack Davis, Chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. It's budget time. And rather than just looking at next year's budget, F&B believes it's appropriate to look at what we approved in May and how things are moving along for the town and the Board of Ed. This is basically the budget that we approved. Now, I'm going to put it in a sort of interesting way. During the course of the year, other than what's encumbered by contract, the town operates basically on a cash basis and doesn't do accruals until the end of the fiscal year. So what gets paid is what ends up in the budget. If you look briefly at these areas, you can see what the expenditures are. I will mention on capital, that's a transfer at the end of the year. So while it's a small amount, it's because it hasn't been transferred yet from one account over to the reserve fund. We looked at revenue, and we're going to talk about that, and we've also looked at taxes. Going to the Board of Ed, once again. Much better. The Board of Ed budget can be broken down into two main categories. The first is general education RCs. The other is special education RCs, which comprise special education. An RC is a responsibility center. In the old days, us accountants used to call them a cost center. That's basically what they are. The special education is the LP and the special education. What this is showing is currently there is a projected favorable variance, in other words, more money in there than what we, there's less expenses and more revenue than what was budgeted, so that if nothing else changed and we stopped today, the Board of Ed would be returning $623,000 to the town. That represents about 56 basis points of their total budget. I want to go a little bit into the detail. So in the general RCs, some of the variances are the Director of Mental Health has an $80,000 variance. The original budget that they put in for was $147,000. Health insurance, and quite honestly, I'm going to read some of this because Rich Rudel did a great job, and so I'm plagiarizing what he wrote. On the healthcare, health insurance is forecasted to be positive by $117,000. This is due to 3 under-enrolled elementary sections, for which we also budgeted not only the salary but also the health care, 1 less teacher in residence, and an increase in insurance due to job share for the MMS nurse, and insurance for the newly created Director of Mental Health. The Director of Security waived their health insurance, but originally when it was put into their budget, they budgeted for those benefits. Next is, there's a new salary schedule for maintenance and groundkeepers hired after July 1st. Currently, only 4 of the 43 members that fall into this category qualify. I want to mention this is really a significant item that the Board of Ed was able to accomplish. This will have significant savings to the Board of Ed and our taxpayers over the years as there is normal attrition in this position. It's significant and should be noted. Next is in curriculum. I mentioned that's where the Director of Health is. There's a lot of other savings, about $77,000 in RCs. They basically consist of vacancies, some salary changes. As an example, the interns are not being set up, so there's a $29,000 savings on that. I'm not participating in the China exchange. That was $4,700 in salaries, $7,000 in clubs. And Only Holmes Elementary School is doing the intramurals. That saves another $7,000. $100,000. Now, that's not to say there aren't things that are over, because the HHR project is not going to allow the rugby team to play where they had been playing before. There's a $10,000 incremental expense, so there's posts so that they can play at the middle school, Middlesex Middle School. So it's a mixture of all those, but in general, nothing was that significant, so it's $77,000. There's also revenue shortfall. There's $30,000 of anticipated revenue that was associated with the Darien Arts Center and the dance on the down low. That's somewhat offset by that we ended up with more parking fees. We ended up with a very good Turkey Bowl revenue, and we have another $5,000 in Medicare. And I apologize for getting into the weeds on this. On the special ed variance, I'm going to spend a little time on this. There are two main drivers. I'll go to the bottom one first. ELP is currently showing that it's short approximately 31,000. It's a difference in the number of students that they have. However, ELP does accept students throughout the year, and therefore, we could see that this catches up. If not, then we're going to be short on the estimated revenue that was put into the original budget. Excess cost is a reimbursement based upon a formula for what we spend on our high needs, more expensive students in special ed. It's really a safety net. That's basically what it is. And towns and states do it different around the country. But the Board of Ed submitted $3.5 million in December. That was their first filing. It represents 56 students, slightly less than the anticipated 59 students, resulting in a lower claim of about 61. That's part of the bad news. In addition, the state decided to cap certain wealthy towns on how much they can get back. But in the past, everybody threw it into the pot, and then they divided up the pot, and you got a percentage share of what the pot was. I will tell you from a interesting perspective, the pot has stayed the same for many years, and historically it only increased when somebody was running for governor. I mean, seriously. But the pot has been consistent. This is more equitable, and they have increased the pot under this methodology. Problem is that when we did our budget, we anticipated that we were going to get more than 70%. Therefore, we're less on that regard. Again, bad news. What could possibly be the good news? The primary driver of how they calculate this is it's 4.5 times the threshold of what the student anticipates. Now, when we did our budget, we anticipated $109,000 would be our threshold. So while we're getting less money on the percentage, while we have less claims being filed in our initial claim, the fact of the matter is that lowering of $5,000 for 56 students has generated a significant savings to us coming back into the community. I do want to go over the final Board of Ed. Now, if you recall, when I said that they anticipated approximately $600,000, $620,000 coming back to the town, that is after they included about $254,000 for the security initiative, $66,000 for the Director of Mental Health, and the related health care and benefits associated with those programs. So when you look at what the real variance is to the current year's budget, and you add those back in, which are being paid out of current funds in their budget, It's not 56 basis points. It's probably closer to 1%, about 85 to 95 basis points. And that's important because not only do we look at that, but also the Board of Ed looks at that when they're preparing their current budget. Board of Selectmen. This is what they've spent so far. I've broken out the library grant. The library is a grant. It's $4.2 million. It's paid to the library quarterly, and then any excess funds are returned to the town at the end of the year. There's also some contingencies there. I hate to say this, but when I looked at the Board of Selectmen expenses, and I spoke to Kate and earlier and Jen last week, it sounds like a train schedule. But from the expense side, everything looks on a close to schedule. I don't know how else to put it. There's no significant variances. There are some risks. One of the risks are, and we're going to talk about it later in the police contract, we're down about 4 or 5 individuals, and it's vacancies that also are in the Board of Ed. There are a couple of positions throughout the nation, throughout the state, that are becoming harder and harder to fill. Teachers, professional staff, school psychologists and that, policemen. And add to that, Darien does not just throw a body in there. We make sure that they're qualified for the jobs that we want to properly serve this community. So that's why there's some vacancies. But with all honesty, we're having that in the police department, down 4 to 5. We have somebody who's in the academy right now, but that means they're not on tour. The offset to that is that our overtime in the police department is up. So while you would have vacancies thinking you have savings, you have overtime that's offsetting that. We're hopeful, and I say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and that Kate doesn't get angry with me after I've jinxed this. We haven't had any major snowstorms. Yeah, I just saw her reaction when I said that. Hopefully, over the next couple of weeks, we don't end up with a couple, because I guarantee she's going to call me up and say, "What did you do?" But that could help us offset some of those differences. Contingencies. Oh, we had a little overage because we had a primary in for $11,000 in the Register of Voter. But in reality, we're typically looking for larger dollars than $11,000, and most of these are really very close. The other thing that I should say about what happens in the town side and Director of Finance, which also helps the Board of Finance and F&B look at this, is that they do a 5-year average by month of what's been spent or should have been spent. So we can look and say, oh, we've spent 65% of what the budget is. But if we look at the 5-year average, it's typically we spend only 60% at this time, which allows both the Director of Finance, Kate, Town Administrator, the Board of Finance, and everybody else to look to see if there's something we should be looking at. Contingencies. There's 2 contingencies that are, there's more than these 2, but these are the 2 main ones. One is a Board of Finance contingency, which is, for years was $400,000. It's down to $250,000. And historically, they don't come close to spending the $250,000. I think only 1 year did they actually really come and use all their contingency. That's for special items, small items that they can quickly put through. The other is the salary contingency. So when the town goes into negotiation, they anticipate, and they have several contracts that are going on, they anticipate what the salaries might be, what expenses, what other things might be incurred, and they record that. Or if there's a contract that's going beyond the existing year, where we're going to have to backfill when we do a payout, that's put into this contingency account. Don't ask what the makeup of it is, because what it does is give away the town side of how they're negotiating. But we know basically what this is there, and there was a slight reduction in that. There's two other contingencies on the capital side. I'm going to go to the first one. When the Board of Finance and the Finance and Budget Committee looked at their capital, there was a big cleanup of some of the contingencies there and changed how certain things would be accounting for. Things like tools that happen on an every year was started to now look as an imprest rather than being cumulative. And that freed up certain money that saved our taxpayers a lot of money. For the administration, there's an administrative capital that is controlled by the town administrator and the director of finance. And there's a sign-off over, I believe it's $10,000, if something other than that comes out. But that's what the $17,000 is. So the capital reserve is that we do projects. Some of the capital projects cost more than what we anticipated. Some are less than what was budgeted. When the project is done, it gets closed out into this capital reserve. In the past, the capital reserve has been used sometimes to move some monies around. So if you recall, when the HHR project first started, they used $122,000 out of the capital reserve to get the initial consultants going. Once the bonding was approved, that money was then returned to the capital reserve. So it gives the Board of Finance some flexibility to move things forward on a lot of the capital items. They do look at this, and some of this will be moved back into paying for capital when they do the budget. But that's totally at the discretion of the Board of Finance. Investment revenue. I'm going to go to the only one, I'll tell you the ones that look on schedule. Town clerk was slightly increased last year. It's at 56%. Obviously, a lot of homes aren't sold during the winter, but they do anticipate that will come in on a target. Same with building permits. That actually, looking at the 5-year average, we're at 53% of what was budgeted. Historically, it's about 35% at this time of year. So a lot of that has to do with the projects that you heard P&Z talk about during the state of the town. There's other revenues, other taxes. They're on a close to schedule. On the intergovernment, this year, there's about $185,000 on the accrued fiscal year 22 sales tax sharing. It's MRSA. We did not budget for it. We had not gotten it consistently over the years. So that's a little bonus that we're getting in there. Everything else, we're on a close. We got a little bit, $14,000 less here or there from the government. But for the most part, that's our big hit there. Investment revenue. Not to get in trouble, I'm going to read this. Investment revenue always has a 1-month lag. So the number that we have here with $369,000 is in reality 5 months of investment revenue. Now, if you're looking over to the left-hand side, you see that we budgeted approximately $72,000. Big difference. When the original budget was done, it was done in October, and quite honestly, we weren't even making the revenue that we had budgeted in the prior year. There was a request to recast this in March, and we said no. Nobody anticipated the amount of increases that Powell has done with the Fed. There were 2 increases of 50 basis points in December and then in March. But then the 75 basis points has definitely driven up what the earnings that we're getting. In addition, there's some changes. We're investing more in the STIF, which is the state funds. And hats off to Monica. We are now investing in treasuries, which for the long time we hadn't. And there were some concerns that our council had. They were all resolved. We now work with Chase, and if I recall, the agreement to it was someplace, and Wayne can correct me, but it was someplace in the neighborhood of about 200 pages to just make sure that the town was properly secure, and Wayne was able to resolve all the concerns he had before. We only have $2 million in it, and we only record the revenue once the security, U.S. security matures. So there's another $40,000 that is coming in. But those are two things that are also assisting the earnings that we have on the revenue. Overall, I mentioned the $2 million. The total portfolio at the end of December is $75,985,000 plus change. As I said, the catch happens to be that certain revenues are added at different times. The other thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to go back here. Maybe I have to go back to the overview. Taxes. When we look at the 5-year average, we're down from where we typically are at the end of December. Part of that has to do with the acquisition of People's Bank, little things that affect towns. People's always paid out of escrow the taxes to the communities in December. M&T pays it in January. So there's a slight difference that we're seeing there simply because of when we receive payment. That being said, we have heard that there's a little bit of softness being detected in our collections. I promise you that Kathy Larkins, the town administrator, Board of Finance are all watching that very closely. The last thing that I'm going to go and talk about is fund balance. The goal is that we now look at fund balance based upon the adopted budget. When we ended last year, we ended up at 17.27%. I'm using the numbers that they have. The Board of Finance puts down that it's unaudited, so I'm leaving it as unaudited, even though our financial statements have been audited since that time. If you remember, we approved in the RTM Resolution 22-34, which was school security improvements. That came out of the general fund for $335,000, so that basically reduced it. If we use the minimum balance of 12%, we have over $8.3 million in excess of what our minimum should be in the general fund. Now, I'm not on the Board of Finance. I can't make certain comments, but I can say that it's my understanding that certain agencies would prefer that we're closer to 16%. That reduces what our excess is to over $2 million, which is still very healthy. But we have a $2 to $8 million range that's there for any emergencies. One last thing that I want to say, and I apologize for boring you with these numbers, but I do encourage everyone to do a little homework. The town does quarterly department head reports. If you don't want to watch it on Channel 79, which covers it, yep. There's a wonderful packet that explains everything that's going on. It sort of gives you a little vision of what's going to be coming down the road, what they're working on, and it's a really good document to start to understand what's going to eventually be in the RTM, or we're going to see in a budget. The Board of Ed Finance Committee does monthly reports, which is then presented to the full Board of Ed. Rich Rudel does an excellent job, cost center by cost center, going through, explaining the variances, tracking it from one month to another. Again, you can find that on the Board of Ed site. It really helps in F&B tracking what goes on throughout the year, and it's a great document. The Director of Finance produces, I will have one thing, and Rich has heard me say this before, the packet that they put together is really good, except that you got to turn your computer this way in order to read it, because it's lengthwise, and, you know, that I think that's a good budget thing to figure out how we fix that. Rich is laughing back there. He's heard me say that before. The Director of Finance provides full financial statements every month at the Board of Finance meeting. It talks about the contingencies. It talks about our bonding, where we stand on that. It talks about what our expenses, and gives you the relationship of what's going on there. It gives us revenue. It talks about other funds that are existing in town. It's a great document. And last but not least, very early in every Board of Selectmen meeting, our town administrator gives a quick update on what's going on. So you don't have to listen to the whole Board of Selectmen meeting, just listen to the front part if you don't want to listen to the rest of it, and you can hear that. But those are 4 things that I think are very beneficial for this group to be looking at, that helps you understand what will be coming down the road and the work that we have ahead. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. I'll just leave it here and get it later.
One thing I'll say about that presentation is that it does hard, but Jack makes it look easy. Distilling all of the information from budget documents that are like that and getting it into some format where it's understandable takes a lot of work. And but I think it's very helpful for the RTM to see that. Next item is actually some business. Item 23-1, approval of the contract between the Town of Darien and the Darien Police Association on behalf of the Public Health and Service Committee, Mac Patrick.
Thank you, Seth. Good evening. I'm Mac Patrick, Chair of Public Health and Safety, and I move Resolution 23-1, approval of the contract between the Town of Darien and the Darien Police Association. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you. Without objection, I will waive the reading of the resolution. Thank you. Public Health and Safety Committee met virtually and jointly with the Finance and Budget Committee in a special meeting on Wednesday, January 18th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Both committees had a quorum, Public Health and Safety, with 13 of 16 members present. Kate Bush, our town administrator, gave an overview of the contract. Kate noted that general wage increases of 2.75% start July 1st, 2022 and July 1st, 2023. A 3.125% wage increase starts July 1st, 2024 and July 1st, 2025. Kate noted a one-time $1,500 payment to every member employed as of the date of the execution of the contract as a consideration for the area cost of living. She noted the town negotiated to manage medical costs by increasing premium costs shared by the employees. Questions were raised regarding how Darayen's pay to police members stacks up against other comparable towns nearby. Kate noted Darien pays its policemen well, but the overall department is relatively small and there is less opportunity for advancement in rank. Personnel do leave Darien, not for better pay, but for the ability to move up in rank. The police pension plan is not changed, but members can cash in up to six sick days each year in exchange for a contribution to the Employee 557 account. This is an encouragement to manage sick time appropriately. The two committees broke from the joint meeting, and the Public Health and Safety Committee discussed and voted unanimously to not reject the police contract, and we ask that the full RTM do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mac. And next, on behalf of the Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis, Chair.
I'm Jack Davis, RTM Finance and Budget Committee Chair. Mac, thank you for that excellent report. I'll try not to repeat anything. You guys have already heard too much from me. One of the things that I did mention, I want to stress again, that police are one of those jobs that are getting harder and harder to fill, to find quality individuals. The other thing is, we have a very mature police force. Most of them are at the upper ranks. And in fact, at the end of this contract, it's anticipated that 90% of our members will be at the top tiers. In addition, this contract's running from July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2026. In the past, most of our contracts are 3 years. The union asked for this to be a 4-year contract, and after consideration, the town agreed. There is currently, they're going to be increasing their medical insurance to 11%, then 12%, and then 13% for the health care. That will generate about an $8,000 annual savings, not counting any of the increases that might occur there. It would be more. The committee really applauds the retirement plan change, allowing the 6 days to put employees going into the 457. They're allowed to move 6 days annually into that. Part of it also is, if you have days off, sometimes you just take it. If you can not take it off, especially since we're a little bit tight on people in overtime, if people understand they can bank some of that, that's hopefully an encouragement to have more people on the job and use it positively. The committee voted unanimously to approve this contract and recommends the same to the full RTM. One note is we did have one abstention due to job requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Are there any other committees of the RTM that would like to report? Any comments from town officials? I see none. Comments from members of the RTM? See none. Comments from the public? I see none. We're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. No votes, please. Abstentions? I see none. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agreement between the Darien Board of Education and the Darien Education Association. Speaking on behalf of the Education Committee of the RTM, Ed Washeka. Or in his absence. That's not Ed.
Hi, everyone. I'm filling in for Ed tonight. I'm Liza Lucas. I'm the Vice Chair of the Education Committee. Tonight, I'm moving Resolution 23-2, the recently negotiated agreement between the Darien Board of Education and the Darien Education Association, which I will refer to as the teacher's contract. Do I have a second? The Education Committee met twice to discuss the teacher's contract. We first met on January 16th and again on the 18th in a joint meeting with the RTM Finance and Budget Committee, where we were joined by members of the school administration as well as by members of the Board of Education. The teacher's contract was negotiated in the midst of a teacher shortage. For example, Darien has lost 70 certified teachers in the past year. Through exit interviews, the administration was able to learn that teachers left for a variety of reasons, including retirement and the desire to leave the teaching profession, but also many were leaving for positions in school districts closer to their homes and/or for higher salaries. The Board of Education wanted to make the new teacher's contract more competitive and to both retain experienced teachers and to attract the youngest teachers. Superintendent Dr. Adley considered this an opportunity to recognize the hard work and dedication of our teachers, and Board of Education Chair Duke Deneen noted that the negotiations between the parties was a collaborative effort. The new teacher's contract will govern from July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2026. The salary increases were done through an equal dollar distribution. Steps 5 through 19 will increase $1,500 per step, and the increase for step 20 will be $2,600. The new salary schedule eliminates steps 3 and 4 and adds step 20, which reduces the total number of steps to 16, and most importantly, increases the starting pay for a younger teacher to the top salary in our DIRG. This would amount to a 13.68% settlement, or a cumulative $6,361,006 over the course of 3 years. With assumed turnover of approximately $600,000 per year, or about 1.2% of the base, this would bring the net settlement to $4,561,006, or 9.82%. Other notable changes include an increase in the teacher's premium cost share from 21% to 23% over the life of the contract, paid maternity leave extended past the FMLA disability timeframe by 4 days, stipends, for example, co-curricular positions and leadership positions, will increase by 2.5% each of the 3 years. Strengthened language around bereavement leave, personal days become no-reason days, and 1 additional professional development day. At the RTM Education Committee meeting on January 16th, with 11 of 14 members present, constituting a quorum, the RTM Education Committee voted not to reject the teacher's contract, with 10 in favor and 1 abstention, and we recommend to the full RTM to do the same. For the sake of clarity, the member voting to abstain did so because he was awaiting additional information and answers to questions, which were subsequently provided in the meeting on January 18th. This member told us that he intends to support the contract tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, speaking on behalf of the Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis, Chair.
I don't even need my glasses for this one. I'm Jack Davis, RTM Finance and Budget Chair. Thank you for that absolutely tremendous report on this teacher's contract. There's not much that I can add other than when we talk about it being the teacher's contract, it's really all certified educational staff. So it includes school psychologists, it includes social workers, it includes people working on curriculum. So we call it the teacher's contract, but it encapsulates quite a few employees in our area. That's my only addition. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee voted not to reject this contract and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. Are there other committees of the RTM that would like to report? Okay. Public officials? Comments? Members of the RTM? I see none. Members of the public? I see none. Looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. For item 23-1, the police contract passed 70 yes, 0 no's, 1 abstention. No's, please. And abstentions. See none. Wait a second here until we get this all tallied. I have a revision on the vote on the police contract, actually 71 yeses, 0 noes, 1 abstention. Results on the teacher's contract, 71 in favor, no noes, 1 abstention. Great to see you all. Happy New Year, belated. And I'll accept a motion to adjourn. I see so many hands. All those in favor, please rise.